folder. If not, then we will ask the team also to share to you the folder. So in the folder, what you would see, I'm just going to share my screen. So hopefully you see my screen. So is there any from our team, like, who can tell me, just sometimes just give me feedback, because I will not be able to see the one that I'm sharing. But hopefully yeah, so hopefully you see it. So what you'll find in the folder, in the week 0 folder, is that as we populate, so of course the challenge that you probably have received is that you will see it here, and then also just the ones that you're going to be shared is just that every day we will upload some of our tutorials in those folders. So today is Monday, so in the Monday folder there you would see some of the materials, like for the tutorials. So some of them are recorded, so this is also recorded and will be shared in respective like the paths to the recorded one. I think it will be a YouTube, it will be uploaded to YouTube and it will be shared. But like for the first one, the terminal one, you will be able to see. You also have like the recording here. So we will cover, so according to so this document that you have seen, hopefully, or if you haven't seen, you will see that there is a description, which is just a challenge, and that Abu Bakr will later describe in detail. But what is more important, what I would like to share here is, of course, the first task that you required is to use extensively, I would say, in an intermediate level, the GitHub, and kind of you have to clone, and you have to fork, and you have to make some branches, as well as also you need to do some kind of unit testing. And then another part just here on the bottom is the schedule for the tutorials. And what is today, that what you'll be covered will be the environment setup, just your computing environment. Mostly these days we're using, of course, Jupyter notebooks and Google Colab, so that we highly encourage that, just something that shows your code and output. But at the same time, scripting is important for deployment, therefore it should be should go hand in hand. So we'd kind of do some intermediate Python and some understanding of GitHub, as well as also the CI/CD pipeline. So in detail here, you would see what is in the morning. The color in all of this document, the color purple just is for the morning and blue is for the afternoon. So what we will cover now is these two parts, Python programming as well as Bash programming. It's just simple introduction to terminal coding. I mean, not coding, but just commands, and then using Jupyter Colab environment, and as well as also just version control, which is basically just GitHub, and some of the continuous integration makefile. And I will just say only basic here because we'll come back to it later. So I am going to be much more what is the point. I will just describe only the points here, and then in the afternoon you will have some data engineering tutorial, as well as also introduction to this challenge, especially the Twitter challenge, and the different tasks in the afternoon. And if you have any question, you can also write them in the Google Meet, as well as also in a Rocket Chat. I probably won't see it here, but it's like my colleagues will tell me if there are any questions, so I will be able to know. But type it in the in whichever convenient. Most likely better, of course, if it's in Rocket Chat, so that you can go back and check it for other people as well. Okay, so let's start with kind of the very bash, because that's usually whatever you start, either you are in Windows or you are in Linux or Mac. What you usually experience is some kind of like, you need to get, have some basic understanding of commands. And sometimes it's really important to have shortcuts. Like, I mean, it when you code, you sometimes want to go to, you are at some part of the code and you want to be able to do, so for example, if I'm here and if I'm in the code, so I would like to do, so let's just say I'm here. So I would like to go just to the beginning, and of course I could just call it like that, but if I do it with this Control A and Control E, then I can actually easily move. And I'm using Mac, so that might be slightly different, but I think Control A and Control E normally for most things, just for most Linux derived, as well as also usually it becomes like Control is go to the end and Control A is come to the beginning. And then if you press Alt, of course, then you would just go like step by step across words. So usually these are small things, but really improves your ability to code faster. And the code faster means return time fast, which usually really is the key in whatever a lot of complicated things people impose, so that they increase the efficiency. And some of the way to increase the efficiency is to know the kind of the shortcuts, but it's not really for the shortcuts we will just look, but it comes everywhere, like including terminals. If I'm in a terminal, you probably won't see this one, but if I think there should be, so if I do, I think it doesn't probably have terminal here. I'm in a Colab. So, but yeah, if you can actually get in Jupyter Notebook, you can actually easily get. So I think I can do this. It's much easier this way. So I can switch to Jupyter Notebook. So there, for example, this is, so you see my Jupyter Notebook, right? Yeah. Yep. Okay. So here, like, you can have a notebook, but also you can have your terminal. And most of the time, this is very quick to check, right? So I will just be able to do, this is now ls. And as I said, for example, I can type a very complicated, like echo, now, oh, I want to edit, I want to delete, instead of my name, is like, I want to say hello first. So I can usually just, that's where I would just go to quickly Control A, and then I can just jump just exactly there, and I can add. So this is just when you type very kind of quickly in a terminal, and the shortcuts apply. And if you have also other Emacs that you're using, the shortcuts apply. So the same shortcuts, you can use them in many, many places, including this terminal. So if I'm just going to increase this one so that you can see. So this is the kind of echo, for example, in the case of Bash, is just says, just output whatever I am typing or whatever is in front of it. And you can have also variables actually. Zoom in or yeah. What about now? Yeah. So okay. So for example, like I could actually define name just the bar. Then I can separate it like Python with just that, and then I would, instead of just typing it, just like I can say name, right? So this becomes a variable, and then I can just shorten it basically, right? So again, it outputs, because like the only difference in Bash is that variables are defined without space, as you could see here. Like whatever I can define, but there shouldn't be between equal sign, the variable name, and the value, there shouldn't be any space. That's, Bash is quite strict on this kind of thing. So you have to use echo, is basically in Python would be print, and then you basically just output anything, any complex complex part. So I'm just gonna mute some things. Why can't I mute? Okay, so this is like a quick way, but in this terminal, like in this Jupyter notebook, you can see um, that I have the very useful shortcuts described, and that is Control A, Control E that I just described, but Control C is just whatever you are typing. For example, in the case I am like, I can just go back to the command, but then I don't want to output it. I just want to go to, whatever I want to interrupt what I'm doing, then I could just go Control C. And then it just basically means just close it. Or I could just do, I don't know, so some kind of like find here .here global, it's like, and if it's trying to do a lot, then I could just basically, so some of them it's basically just like that, but in this case I could just interrupt it. Of course, the cleanest way to interrupt some things are just quit, but even if just it is running something in the background, I can basically stop it. If it's stuck, usually Control C is the very basically in the kind of Linux environment, like any shortcuts is really just key, just because you can interrupt something, and that's important. If you have a, in the past, if you have this while loop that doesn't interrupt, the only way to interrupt it is Control C. And then you have that, like again, like I've been working on this now, the screen is kind of goes, and I want to go back to just the screen, recenter it, just to start the beginning of line, for the cursor to be the beginning of line. That's what I will do, Control L, and I'm just back there. That's just another easy. So these are just shortcuts that really simplify your work, and then you can search, and there are different things. In a terminal environment, you can also copy and paste. So, but copy in terminal environments are mostly, it's called YANK. So it's because it just comes, again, Linux is Control, YANK, and then it's kind of, you can do Control Shift and then C will just copy anything for you, or Control K, for example, it will kind of kill that line, or basically just it cuts that line. So K is usually for cut. And the same things actually are also in Jupyter Notebook. So even Jupyter Notebook has very similar shortcuts. So it's like the same shortcuts are everywhere, but I would say when you are working in terminal, it's so convenient, and it's very important to learn these things. And another, of course, is in Bash basics, like what you really need to know is, mostly you have already encountered that you need to export a variable. So it's basically, in Python would be a global variable. The whole, your computer is, if like in a Linux environment, the whole your computer is kind of a type of Python, and it needs to know a variable sometimes. And so those variables needs to be defined. Even Python needs to know where it, which path it will start from, like if it's a new. So it's basically the home directory, and all that. So in that case, the only, Bash has in many Linux distributions, where I think in Linux, and even in Windows, you have a certain form of like global variables, paths. So in paths, you have to describe which paths to search by default, without specifying. So that the way that you would do it is kind of like you would export something. So there are many things that you would define. Sensitive things, for example, you don't want to share in your code, but you put them as a environment. They are called environment variables, and then they are done using export. So basically, like if you want to, like if I want, just even I can, of course, just temporarily, I can of course make, just like anything, I can export an environment variable for all bashes that are going to be children of this terminal, because whenever I open new, it's still they're going to be children of this terminal. For all of them, this export will work, but otherwise I have to define it in a very, in its own place called bash RC. So it's like, usually it just happens if you are using a bash environment, then in bash RC, so that's where it is. And if you want to see it, you can less it. I will come to it, and that's where everything is defined. But as you could see, like this is the way that you would export something. Like that means that you would, for example, because I installed Conda environment, Conda for itself kind of added this thing called export paths, that the space, the place where I put is just, it's called workspace and Conda bin, and it will just then, after that, it appends all the other paths that were defined before. This way, now the computer where I am running this thing will know where Conda is. Like, therefore, when I say Conda, then it knows, it will just go, because it will look all every places, but because this one is defined first, it first goes there. If it finds Conda, great, it will bring it. If it doesn't, it will just continue kind of going and looking at the different paths that are defined in the path under the path environment variable. So it's very important. It's like it's all, whenever you do CI/CD, a lot more of the CI/CD or the continuous integration and continuous development happens through environment variables, whether you are kind of defining in AWS. AWS, when it brings the computer, it needs to know certain global variables, some certain variables that are kind of used for searching this, for searching that, and placing that. So that's very important. Echo, I just showed you. So, but environment variables in shell are also kind of, so I just press usually less is like a way to just show, and you can just queue so that it doesn't basically take space. So that's a good thing. Cat or other commands sometimes just take space sometimes, so you want to less quickly, and then queue is just the usual way. So if there are many environment variables already, so one way to look at them is just usually, as I said, echo is just print, so you can see them, but then you don't know how many, but you just type to access a global or environment variable. What you do is that you basically do $, and then you type the command. But if you don't know the command, you can just tap. Then it will show you the number of, environment variables that are defined. So, every instance, every basically program, when you install it, it does actually define. So CC is, for example, the C compiler, C flags, LD flags, all of these are defined because when I installed C, it installed itself. Jupyter, when I installed itself, it also just kind of it installs itself, or it will just put environment variable for itself, so that it can access it anywhere and stuff. So there are many, in this case, in my system, there are 141 environment variables that I can just go, just more and more, I can just check. So host is, for example, one very key. Sometimes when you are automating, you need to know the name of the host, or it's basically usually just local host. If it is a thing, it's kind of the IP for the thing, such that you will be able to automate things. So knowing environment variables is very important, and you can access them or see in your system what are environment variables using echo and $, and by just pressing tab, just so that it tries to complete. Therefore, it tells you, it gives you all the possible options. Okay. So again, yeah, it's like, these are very key ones. If you just don't know what kind of shell, because there are many types of shells. I'm talking about Bash, but there are many other shells that are used. So, but let's just imagine, just for now, we are using that. But if you just want to know what type of shell you are using, then you can basically just do that. It tells you, oh, the shell is Bash, like it's a system variable that the Linux itself defines, right? And then the kind of, if you want the version of that, like it could be even whatever, then you just type like that, and it will give you. So it's a quick way to check, right? And then, so sometimes you don't know where you want to find a folder where it's the path is, and that's where is, who am I, for example. These are very simple things or very basic things. So if I say like, who am I, then it will tell me which user I am. I'm Yababan, of course, it's Yababan. But if it's another user, if you're using a system user, it tells you who the user is, And where is Bash, for example, then it gives me the folder where it is, or it doesn't find. So maybe SH. SH it finds in these paths, Bash is found in this case. For example, if there is no command, let's say a command called yabbi, which I know that it doesn't exist, then it says, yeah, it's like yabbi doesn't, just it doesn't exist, therefore it doesn't tell me that it doesn't find anything. So this where is another just very useful to know paths. But then these are clear as just it's the same as Control L. That's a shortcut, that one. But if you want to type it, for example, I would just say clear. I will just clear that, and I get back to a clean shell. So these are very, so all these are kind of very key, but these ones are the mostly often, like basically I would say 80%, 90% of your time, you probably are going to type these things in Linux. I would say even just a small one, head, tail, more cut, then soft linking one folder to another without copying it, and the most important, ls and less. So basically, ls means, as I just said, if you just type ls, it will tell you the content of the current folder. But of course, you can give it a pass, the folder before. What are the files in the folder before? This is just this, that it's in the home, I know. PWD just tells me, okay, tell me where I am. It's basically just the location, the path location where I am, right? And I can just, also I can just say lace, like ls again, and then I see that, can I lace this thing called IPython NV? I just want to know what, I know it's an IPython notebook, but why not? I just want to see it just as a text. So what kind of file looks like? So I can lace it. As you can see, wow, okay, IPython notebook is actually just a JSON file. It's like everything is just all what we think is like some complicated thing. This is just, or even figures. If there are figures, they are also some form of like text, because it must be, because the IPython notebook or Jupyter notebook contains everything, and that everything is contained in just JSON. Therefore, we know in JSON, figures, whatever, are some kind of hashed version. So it's kind of the bits are kind of encoded. So that means, yeah, just now I see, like without too much detail. Of course I didn't run it, but just I was able to just clearly investigate this, what IPython notebook is, by just quickly without leaving anything. So that's a power of knowing a little bit of shell, because you can do so many things easily. And I can, of course, yeah, like I think I would not describe. So you have this thing in this folder, in week 0 folder, it's called terminal get started, that you can just basically learn a lot of them, what they do. I would say if you have done already, if you know most of it, just fine. But if not, try to learn them, because they just come handy when, to make yourself, like, I would say so much. By far, 80% of the improvements in your work sometimes comes from just learning these small things, okay? And if you are creating a directory, you don't have to go to the GUI, just in the terminal, you can create directory back there, or you can change directory CD, or you can ask in which directory you are using PWD. And then comes to this remote working. So when you are remote working, wherever company which you are gonna be, the most thing you do is that you just have to log into a certain system, because data is somewhere, like the computing power, maybe you don't have it, you may need to go to the cloud, and that's what you need to do. You need to know how to create, SSH keys. So SSH, just like passwords, but with, the different ports. The SSH port is 22, while the, WW port is 80 or 43. But this is a different type of like authentication, but you will be able to have, like, instead of a browser, you will have a terminal. So that is what I do. So I got terminal to connect most of clouds. Like, this is actually running in a cloud, but I SSH it, and then I went in, and then after that I was able to, it's kind of another form of also authentication, secure authentication thing. So that is very key, that you need to get familiar with. I think, I've told you a few things here, like there are many other important while you are working. For example, if I'm working, let me open, let's say just I opened this thing, so I'm going to go to this folder. I did this TGCD, and then I just, okay, then there are some Python course. Okay, let me just look at them. So maybe I'm just going to use actually Emacs. And then I'm just going to GCU utils. So, okay, so it's coming. Um, let's see. So here is the code I'm working. I probably would just go and look at the code, blah, blah. So this is, I know, a terminal editor. You need to know one either Nano, so or VI or Emacs. So these are usually the default systems, but the most default system is Nano. So Nano and Emacs are very similar, but VI is also a VR type of VI. I mean, it's a different type of shortcutting, but that's it. But while you are working here, you want to still go and check something like, you know, like, oh, you want to know in which folder something is. And the easiest and convenient way is that to make this thing in a background. How do you do it? By pressing Control Z. If I do Control Z, it tells me, oh, one thing is going in the background. Therefore, you can do now anything, but know that something is in the background. And how do you make it to a foreground? By just typing foreground FG. If there are many, you can give it 1 or 2, just depending on, you know, which one you want to bring to the foreground. So in this case, because it's only one, I would just do foreground. Then I got back to where I was. And of course, in the Emacs, I will close Control X, Control C, then I'm done. There's no more in the background. So this is, you know, very quickly, I am working, it's remote, and I just can edit my code, run things, blah, blah, without leaving my terminal. That's the power of a terminal, and you need why we think you need to know. And without it also, you really struggle. So whether you are using Windows or Linux, you really should know these things because it makes your life. Sometimes if you want to really know if the internet connection is actually active, you know, I could just say, is my internet working? I don't have to go and whatever, I can ping. It's called ping Google.com. Then what it does is just it tells me, okay, because the internet is working, it's kind of ping is basically check if there is internet, you know. So if there is no internet, if there is a DNS problem, for example, it will come back and say like, oh, Google.com doesn't work. In that case, I could actually, just without a DNS translation, for example, I could just ping an IP, some IP address that I know, let's say Google, blah, blah. So, but that usually, if that one is resolved, let's say, so this is just, it's working. It's telling me 64 bytes from that, whatever. So it's just a way of telling, otherwise it would say like, oh, timeout or something. So in this case, for example, if this one didn't work, like ping google.com didn't work, but ping some IP address works, then what would I know? Okay, somewhere DNS is not being translated. Maybe there is some proxy that is translating wrongly or something. So this is just a quick way. And if I want to know ifconfig, for example, I will just ifconfig, and then I get all my information about my IP, you know, where is my IP, and I will be able to know, you know, my IP address and all that from there. Just basically all the information that you would just get here, you kind of have it. So these are quick ways that you do even networking, and you know, it's a Linux, basically bash means, or like any terminal shell, basically gives you everything that you can have from GUIs, but just in a more faster, convenient way. So I will just invite you just to look at it, variable naming and stuff there. And I am really running late, so I'm just going to go to the most important part. This is also the part that you will do. One of your assignments this for today is on learning and doing some kind of Git manipulation. So of course, you probably know that is, so there is, yeah, hopefully I can't do anything about it. So hopefully you still hear me. So you have a GitHub, and in that GitHub, basically, of course, you have all, you know, if you don't, you should, but you have all that, you know, that you have your repositories. So you probably then have to, yeah, so great, thanks, Aaron. I think that helps. So the first thing is, of course, how to know how to connect with that. Like if it's somebody's code or somebody's repository, you want to do, like, let's say I just want to fork this one. And now I'm seeing it, okay, I like this thing, or I'm asked to fork it. I'm probably working with another people, or like another package that I want to develop it myself, or add or use, and blah, blah. In that case, the easiest is, that I can fork it to my own space. So this is, for example, the 10 Academy one, and I can just go, there is this thing called fork, star, or watch. So if you do watch, like it's on watching now, but if I just do watch, different types of watch I have, right? So that means like I can actually follow, if a developer commits, then I can do one of them. It can only let me know by email, maybe when participating, somebody is just mentioning my name, or custom, you can do many things. If you like the repository, but you don't want to fork, but you want to just still follow up, then that's basically, you can start it. That means you can like it, basically. And then if you really like it and you want to work, the first thing you do is just fork, right? So in this case, where should we work? Like, okay, like I'm going to fork it there. So then it's saying it's forking. It's really forking means just copy to my space, basically, nothing more. I'm just, okay, now it's in my space. And now I can just basically go and clone it. How do I clone? Simple. I basically just go in the code section, this green part, and there are many options. One is I can download it as a zip. Another one is I can, if I have a GitHub desktop, I do that. But yeah, the usual way is just, I like it, just again, as you know now, is like, I will just want to use the terminal, and I will just go to the root terminal, and I'm just going to git clone. So that's as simple as that. And then I will basically just, whatever I copied before, I will just paste it. Now it would clone to me. Like, just now it's in my local system. That's the first thing, right? Of course, you have done it. For most of you, probably you have done it again and again. That's what you do. You clone something, or you fork something and clone something. And then after you clone, you get into the folder, and then you basically, let's say you do, okay, let me write something on the README. Again, I would use Emacs, README, hello. Instead of that, this I would say, the base, out. First, it's kind of, this is the markdown. So there are many ways I can format. So this is gonna be like, okay, so I would write, okay, clone, fork, pull request, and maybe I would just do also branching, and I would do also some kind of CI. And what else? Maybe we'll just learn about issues. Maybe just I will stop there. And then I will say like, okay, Control C, I saved it. Now I need, okay, I've edited, it's in my local, the README, I have modified it, and I want to send it. And the usual way, of course, is that I would add whatever it is. There are many ways to add, but you means like, okay, whatever is being tracked, just, I don't want to add anything new, but just whatever I'm tracked, just add it. And then, of course, the second very important part is that you need to commit it. Again, still is locally, but that commit needs to get a message. Like, you basically need to have a header for what is kind of, are you committing? Okay, in this case, like modified README, and then I would just say, okay, now git push, and then it will ask me what is the, I don't remember right now, but so in that case you would be like, okay, yeah, but then in your case would be very easy. because then you have full control for that. This one just I don't remember now at the moment. So that's it. Then you commit it and you will see. Okay, let me just actually again. Okay, yeah. So that's how the very first thing, interesting bits you would do. It's like for anything that you are setting up, you can also set up actually like these things, like to not type every time your username and email address, whatever. Should definitely consider configuring your username and email address so that it knows. And on top of that, also for us as a developers, we really also need to know a lot more easy ways, because we may be working in a cloud, in a system, setting up a system. So that I would recommend always to get this, what is called in the developer setting, and you go to the personal access tokens and you generate personal access tokens. So, so in this case, let me just generate new token and notes. In this case, I would just be like, of course, the more the descriptive you gave it, then of course I want to just only, and then I want to set up a thing. I think again, I would definitely want to add repo hook that we will talk, and then I want to be able to do just some gist, then write discussion, and yeah, maybe just this doesn't, and then notification. Okay, so then I will just create this token. So now this is my token. So if I go back and instead of cloning, like, so let's just imagine that I move this folder for now. And then if I now just go back to the clone, but if I do it in this way, so with my, so this is just basically the, like the token that I have. So the token adds basically the same thing. Then now I don't have to, later I don't have to really ask, because this is just an easy way. So if you are working in a, so it's I'm just remotely blah, blah. Now let me just copy from earlier git old. And readme, which I modified. I'm just gonna copy it here. So in the new one, okay? Then I can delete basically. So that's where RMR comes earlier in just in the bash. I told you just this is CP is for copying. I copied exactly what I had in the old readme to the new that I cloned, and I'm just gonna remove this old thing because I don't want it. And so yeah, like that, I just removed, and usually just I would just actually I did Control C so that okay, it's telling me something, so I have to add to remove many dot blah 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 files. I have to force it. So now it's, so now if I do ls, there's only just this git starter. So now I can cd or change directory to git. So I just typed you know, git git, and then I just did the tab for completion. That's why I can get faster. And then I get in there. Now I can ls. I can even ls the readme to see that my earlier modification, as you can see, my earlier modification is actually there because I copied it. I could quit it with a Q button. And then now I can do the same thing before. I can add, I will just go back to that, add anything that's modified, as well as also now I will commit with the same one. And now if I do git push, it doesn't ask me anything. It should just go and work. So you see, like if this is in a cloud environment, all that typing, your username, blah, blah, doesn't work. So you, with the token, you can actually just remove it. So that's why it's really important to generate token when you are working in a system, okay? So yeah, that is the like one easy way, just that you would just do by just generating token from your Git and using it to clone, and you can put that clone. So for example, let me just demonstrate. Right now, I did a very bad, security-wise, not good. So what should I do? I should actually put my token to my bash RC. Okay? And in my bash RC, I would just define anything. Okay, now I call it GitHub token, right? Export 10x token. And then, so not this one. Now you really see I'm just putting it because I want to go and copy from before I type. Therefore, I will just going to make it Control-Z to the background. I just go there, I copy it, Control-C, and then FG again, and I come and I copy. So this is the easy way I can do. Then that's now, then I saved it and I quit. Now I have to reload the bash RC so that it is available now after this in the system. And the way I can reload is that it's called source. So there are two things. Either source or just dot is also working, but just like now bash RC. So just before this is a comment. Comment in bash is basically just the same as Python. So, but I want to see if you know GitHub, if it exists. If it existed, then when I tap complete, it would have given me. Now it is not available in my shell. That's why, okay, I have to source it so that it's available in my shell. After this, if I do echo git and then tap complete, you see it's available. Now it's that one. It's kind of expanded, becomes a variable. Now when I copy, I could have just used that, such that in a system like that, this will be in a secret repository, and always only at dynamic times I just basically complete it, such that your token is secret in that case. Okay. Okay. So for the sake of course, my thing, I would be able to regenerate in the future so that it's secure, because you have seen it, it's in a video. So one way is just for me not to really leave tokens I kind of used now to kind of become a problem, like for me. So I will just delete them. Yeah, so then in this case, basically, you know, whoever saw now, I can generate a new token, blah, blah, right? So just this is a way that you would do. If you have seen it to the world, if you have shown it to the world, better to not to just regenerate or do something. Then forking and cloning, we just complete. Making branches. There are many ways making branch. So the very first way that we can do is just, let's do this one. So now we are inside a Git. How do we know? Because we can just ask Git status. So it tells me that nothing to bridge. So basically the status would have told me if there was anything to commit. If I modify it, for example, again, let me modify readme, and then let me add in the future, we will extend this repo for learning advanced branching. So now I save it and I do that. So now if I do git status, see, it tells me, something is modified. Okay, before there was nothing modified, whatever. If I add, for example, touch some kind of like example.py, touch is basically just say like, if adjust the timestamp basically, but then if the file doesn't exist, it will just create it. If there is, it will just say the kind of modified time will be changed to the time that you did touch. So touch is a very, it's more like, poking. I poke this file now. This file, because it didn't exist, it's now created by touch. Now I can now say, if I do git status, you can see, of course, readme is modified, but then there is something called untracked files. The untracked files is called example.py is added, and it's untracked. Whatever I do Git will not know it unless I add it. The way to add it is that git add example .py. This is the only explicitly I have to add it so that Git tracks it. Now I do that. I also can all of the other files git add, all of the other tracked ones. That's the way to say all tracked ones is just this U and then star. So now all of them that has been included in this case, or readme only, are added. Now I can do git status. Then when I do git status, it says like, oh, okay, change to committed. Before it wasn't that, it was kind of like modified. Now change to be committed are, modified readme, new file example. In this case, I will just say, okay, now I'm just going to commit all of them. So commit with a message, adding new Python file, new example file, for example. In this case, now I give it, great. Still not in remote, because if I go and check it, no, nothing happens. Like if I just go back, so if I go back and refresh it, nothing. So there is no example. And readme is also just only up to this point, the last point. So let's just go and like basically now it's committed, all the changes are added and committed. So the usual way at this point is that if you are working with other people, you should, after this step, before push, you have to do git pull. That means if any other person working in the same code has already added their things, I want to integrate before I push mine. Because I already committed, I'm not going to lose it. Then, but yeah, nobody has done because I'm the only one working in this case. But if you did, it will just integrate it. If not, there will be conflict merge, whatever, but you will resolve it. Your file is safe. Then after that, you just do git push. When you do git push, now, like the reason why it's asking me is that because I deleted this token, right? So another way, sometimes just a hack, I'm just gonna not do it because of time, but I can just generate another one and copy it. Where can I copy it? I can actually, I know where I can copy it. It's called every Git package repository. When you clone or when you do something, it has a folder called Git. So in that Git, there is config. See, like in that, if I open Emacs Git config, then what I would see is that there is this thing. So I can actually just come in my Git again. I go to the, like, just for the sake of showing only, then I go to developer setting and I go to personal access token and I just generate a new token and I call it patients again, and I just do repo, workflow, and user and write discussion. Okay. So, and then this, okay, then generate token. Now I copy this new token and I go to my thing and I can just replace it. So that this is the new one, such that it just, it's a simple hack. Oh, great. Now, if I just do git push, it shouldn't ask me. See? Like, I mean, this is just a simple hack. Sometimes you do, and I still can delete it later and show. Great. So now we have added. Now we can just go to, if we want to, we can go to the profile and just see where's the git started. I think this one is the one that I'm doing, but where I was is just in the forked. So I think I was in a different 10x something. I think this was. So as you see, it's 10x, I see. So let me just go to my. So you see, now all our edits are here and example.py is also just here, even if it's empty. So that's how you synchronize, okay? That's how, and you make branches. So there's many ways to make branches. So one way is, of course, just first you can just say git branch to know where you are. It's only in the main branch, but you can just say, yeah. So it's like there is different ways you could add. So you can, let's call it fix bug, like in this case. So like, so now git branch, So there are now two, like, because it wasn't, so it created like a fixed bug branch. So that's how you make just a simple branch in this case. So you can work now on if you do and yeah, so it's yeah. So the usual way, okay. It should be checkout, sorry. So git checkout. Actually, yeah, so I was more, so this B usually works in the checkout. So if I do git checkout and then a new, let's say, unit testing. So just for the sake of like that, let's make it. So this way now, it will make the new branch as well as also it will translate into just this new branch. So switched to this new branch unit test. So as you can see, you can get all the files that are, so it's because it's branching from the main. So wherever the main was, by the time you do git checkout, it will basically, if it's new, it will take all the code from the main and put it into a new branch. Now you can again say git branch. In this case, you will see like, okay, we have created fixed bug and unit, but at the moment it is in unit test. If you want to change, of course, you know, like to a main, while you just want to see something, you basically just do git checkout main. So in this case, now if you do git branch, then what you see is basically just that you are in this star shows you in which branch you are. So that's how, when you are developing, you basically change a lot of these things. Like you can get, you definitely need to work one thing at a time, and when you work at one thing at a time, you don't want to disturb other people as well, and because your code probably is not yet stable, so you make branches and you work on the branch and then you merge those branches, and then you kind of evolve. That's what part of the CI, the continuous integration. But how do you do it now if you want to merge something, like to, for example, from like, so now if you want to merge, what we ask you is that to do pull request. So if you modify it, let's say in one of them, then you basically just ask a pull request and, you know, a new pull request, and you kind of go through what you have modified, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, you create a pull request. And then when you create a pull request, the other person in the team, for example, who's designated to check that, will just go and check and see like, okay, if the code is fine, whatever, and then they accept it to whatever branch you are merging. That's the usual dev team work, or like kind of software engineering. And what is remaining now, I think with the lack of time, I'm not going to go in detail, is so now you need to set up. So you need to set up kind of, so this is fine. Now you do unit test. After unit test, what really you want to do is that, of course, multiple people, let's imagine we are a team of 5. We're kind of working on different elements. One is extending, for example, if it's a website, for example, one is changing some icons, and another one is kind of doing the back end. Another one is the front end. It could be a React, something. So in these cases, you know, a lot of people maybe is interacting. In that case, whatever they add to the main, it needs to be tested. It needs to be kind of pass at least a certain level. And that's what we call a unit test. We have probably written some unit test, and it should run. So, but it shouldn't run like every time manually. It should run automatically. When someone is merging or when someone is doing something, it should basically just that thing automatically. And that's called the CI part in what we talk. So, and so version control, we finished now, but the CI part, there are many ways to easily do it. But one, of course, the very simple is like GitHub actions, but you have also a number of them like Circle CI, and as simple as also Makefile. So how do Makefiles do? Again, I just attached, I think, one. No, it didn't. Where did I? There should be some Makefile on Monday, but if not, I will add it. Okay, it's not maybe there. It's there. Okay, I will. Yeah. It should be okay. So there, I will add that Makefile. Let me just open it. Just the content to show you that I'm just gonna let's say add Makefile. I'm just saying add this Makefile, so this done. So now if I do even, so it's like if I just do git add Makefile, commit file, push, right? Then I can even just go to that one and see. This is Tenacat actually. So now Makefile is added, right? So this is very easy way. It's a very similar, like also in Travis or when in Jenkins or Circle CI, all of them, they basically have a certain what's called command. I mean, the usual one you build, for example, a software, blah, blah, is a Makefile. If you have a C file that you want to compile them, blah, blah, and you want to automate those things, it's just Makefile. But the extensions now, like in the cloud, and you build through a certain configuration file is like what we call Travis, Circle CI, and all that. So what basically just the principle is the same. You ignore some things, and you tell it like, okay, at the first one usually just is what part. If someone just says make, then it's you show help. But if they say, oh, okay, init, then you basically just do Docker execute, you basically make the Docker, you build the Docker. And if they just do deploy, then you basically deploy. So I will have to edit this one. Like you deploy basically something, like just in this case, like if this was, I just took it from the old 10 Academy WordPress site where we were just using just this Makefile to simply just basically build, deploy, and kind of like update our website just from a simple Docker, like using a Docker, which is running on a Docker file. So this is basically very, very simple. But if you understand Makefile, then you understand all the other Circle CI or Travis or other CI continuous integration, because it's just basically in the same code. When you just git commit, the commit needs to kind of trigger a certain process that basically then tests your code, blah, 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 as you write it. And it tells you, okay, if it kind of passes the test, then it integrates. If not, it kind of maybe stop or write you an email, does something. That's what is a continuous integration. And there is a number of, like for that, there is a number of references in the continuous integration. But I want you to read at least the first one and the last one as a reference, because they give you a more comprehensive, especially the first one from Atlassian, will give you a comprehensive idea why you should use that, especially in a team. But also if you are working in complete different projects, working at different times, that's also important. Different features for your code, it's important. So with that, I know that I really ran out of time, but with that, the first tutorial session is over. So if you have any questions, I will just go back and check and see if there are burning questions that are there already that I could answer. But that's we finished the first one. So Yeah. Okay, great. Great. So I think, yeah, let's, then we will have the next tutorial session. What time is the next one?
The next one is at 1 p.m. UTC. So that is from now.
GMT.
1 p.m. GMT.
Yeah. Okay. So
in 2.5 hours.
So in 2.5 hours, 1 p.m. GMT. I think Ethiopia and Kenya is, I know that it's GMT +3. And the others, I think people can post if the time is confusing, but I think the best is from now, it's 2.5 hours. So
but maybe people can also ask questions on Rocket Chat.
Exactly. And if you have any questions, then ask it in Rocket Chat. So, but yeah, and let's know also your feedback, how, how was it, the tutorial, if there are any changes that you want to make, such that I know it's quicker and it's kind of fast, whatever, but the whole point is that you gave you some of the references. You have also the templates, the course that is shared, so you can go through on your own time. But yeah, for now, just let's stop it there, and we continue the discussion over Rocket Chat. Ciao, everyone. Bye.